Hi everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Hallmark Plus More, where we watch and talk about shows, movies, mysteries, Hallmark ornaments, and anything else that floats our boat. So today I'm going to be reviewing NCIS Origins, Season 1, Episode 15. So before I get into the review, I just want to say thank you to everybody who subscribes to my channel, likes my videos, leaves me comments. I appreciate it so much. And I read all my comments. I love interacting with everybody. So if you have any questions or comments about this episode or anything in general, you can just leave them below. So getting into this episode, it starts out with the flashback of Frank's and Tish. So remember, they broke up. Trish was assaulted and raped in a parking garage, and they never found the guy. So Frank hasn't been able to let it go. He's still working the case. So it kind of shows that flashback of them breaking up because Frank comes clean to Tish and was like, "You told me to let it go. I couldn't let it go. I'm still searching for the guy." So she was like, "I love you, but I have to go." So that was a couple episodes ago, and it shows a flashback of them splitting up. So I'm like, okay, usually when you show a flashback, it's going to be about that, right? So we're going to see how Franks is kind of dealing with that split. He doesn't tell anybody at work, but I feel like they all know. So, and nobody really wants to talk to him about it, which I don't blame them because with that Frank's character, it's not something you really talk about. If he doesn't bring it up, you don't talk about it. That's just the way it is with coworkers and personal lives most of the time, especially with Frank's. And you see Tish, you see some flashbacks of her. She's actually living in her uncle's guest room, and you see some flashbacks of her as a little girl with her uncle. So that was kind of a sweet moment seeing that. And you see that throughout the episode, which I'll get into later. So, like I say, he doesn't talk about it at work, but everybody kind of knows. And then you also see a scene with Gibbs. He is in a grief counseling meeting. So, I think they've hinted at that in the last few episodes. He still doesn't speak, but the fact that he's going and he's listening to everybody else, I think, is always a good step forward. They ask Gibbs if he wants to talk, and of course he doesn't. And then he gets beeped because he has a case. So the case is a woman was burned up in a car in a parking lot, and she was killed with a knife, but they see defensive wounds, and they're like, she tried to fight back. And you find out that she was raped. Like they can tell there's blood on her legs. So, now they're thinking, okay, she was raped and killed and, slit with a knife, and they burn the car, basically to hide their tracks or to hide any kind of DNA, because she was naked from the waist down. So Franks immediately asks if her ID was found. And Randy looks in the trunk. He sees like a gym bag. He can't really find the ID. So they say no initially because everything's kind of burned. And of course, Frank's mind goes to Tish's case because remember, they had that in the flashback. And I'm thinking, okay, are they going to find the guy? And they answer a question that I always wanted to know in this episode. They answered a question of when it happened. So we find out in previous episodes exactly what happened. It's so sad. Tish was raped in a parking garage and they never found the guy. Well, we find out in this episode it was 11 months ago. So that's what I was wondering. Did this happen to her years ago? Has she been dealing with this grief? Because when you're physically assaulted like that, it stays with you. A lot of women block it out, but I've always wondered that because Franks isn't letting it go. But the way Franks is and the way the show has shown it the last few episodes since we found out what happened to Tish, they kind of make it sound like, he's been searching and on this, hunt for that person. So I'm glad we find out how long it's been because I just assumed it was a couple years. But he's, like I say, the reason they split up was Franks couldn't let it go. So I'm saddened that they split up because I like them as a couple and I understand both sides. Obviously, being a woman, I understand where Tish is coming from, but at the same time, Franks is wanting to get the guy, right? Because he's probably out there raping other women. So I see both sides of the breakup. I'm just sad that it's come to that they have to split. So, obviously Franks has that on his mind. Even though he split with Tish, he's not letting it go. He still wants to find out who did this. So when he finds out, that this woman was killed and there's no ID, he thinks it's the same guy. So apparently that's one of the things that he does. The rapist took Tish's ID, so they think that's part of, what he does. He rapes women, takes the ID as trophies. So right away, when Frank says that the ID's gone, he's like, okay, there's similarities. The car was burned in a parking lot, or I'm sorry, a parking garage. So there's definitely similarities. Takes the ID, it's a parking garage. She was raped. So Frank tells Mary Jo to get the phone number and contact for Noah Oakley, which is Wheeler's contact for the FBI. So Mary Jo even says, like, is Wheeler okay with that? And Frank's just says, get it for me. So I'm like, okay, that's going to come back to, he's going to get in trouble for that because they wouldn't have had that 2-minute conversation if it wasn't a big deal. And of course, later, Wheeler does get upset with Frank's. And, you can see his frustration for talking to Oakley behind his back. He's like, that's my contact. It needs to go through me. But obviously, Franks wants to talk to him because he is the lead on Tish's rape case. So he's like, I need to get everything on the information you have because I think it's the same guy. I think he's escalated to murder. So Oakley tells Franks, we caught a break in the case. We brought in a man for questioning. His name's Cook. Some of the girls even ID'd him. And Oakley doesn't know that Franks is Tish's, boyfriend or ex-boyfriend. So he's like, did all the girls do it? And, he says, yeah, Tish did too. So now Franks is finding out that Tish has gone in and did a lineup or picked out Cooks as the rapist. So, it's definitely a good break in the case. However, they don't have enough to hold him. So even though the girls ID'd him, they say it's still not enough evidence, which is heartbreaking. I understand eyewitnesses can be wrong, but to these women, when something like that happens to you, the picture that you have, it is like burned in your brain. So I understand that witness statements and, eyewitnesses aren't always accurate, but when it comes to rape victims, I feel like it's a little different because they're going through this tragedy and I feel like they're more accurate in describing who did it to them. But that, that's not always the case. There are people who, eyewitness the people wrong. So I understand the law is the law and you need the evidence. Like I get it. I just think it's heartbreaking in this case if several women ID'd Cooks and they still can't arrest him. They need more evidence. So Oakley basically tells Franks, like, if this is your guy and he's escalated to murder, like, I'll send over everything on him. I want you to nail him. Like, we know he's raping these women and we can't arrest him. So if you think he's your guy, I will willingly, send everything over. So now Franks tells the team, Gibbs, Randy, Layla, what happened to Tish and that he thinks it's the same guy and we're going to nail him, right? And then he tells Layla, like, you have to take point, which point means the lead. You need to take the lead. I want it to be above board, quote unquote. Basically meaning no way they can call foul play. Like, it has to be by the book. So they're all a little taken back finding out what happened to Tish because that's terrible. And Layla understands. She's like, yeah, I'll take point because if it is the same guy, we want to nail him. We all know and love Tish. So they're going to go after Cooks because, like I said, he's kind of who the girls have identified. Now they have to get him in the parking garage and kind of connect him to Joan Lewis, which is the woman who died in the fire. And Cooks comes willingly to talk to him. The other thing, too, when Tish had that conversation with Franks in the past episodes about not letting this go, they had a lead. The man who raped all these women, including Tish, had a scar on his neck. They all identified it. And one of the women thought they saw him walk into a laundromat. So Franks has been basically stalking this laundromat looking for a man with the scar on his neck. It's a very, not a great lead, but it's a lead nevertheless. And Franks is determined to get this guy. So he's been spending all night in the laundromat trying to see this guy. So when they find out Cooks lives above the laundromat that Franks has been, you know, checking out and staking out basically, he's like, yes, it's definitely Cooks. So he's a little too close to it because he's just assuming Cooks killed Joan Lewis. He's not considering any other suspects, right? He wants it to be him, and I get that, it's personal. So they go to Cook. He comes in willingly, right? He's like, oh, is this from the other thing? Because remember, he was questioned before and he got let go. So he's thinking he can get away with anything. And Layla goes in the interview room to interview Cooks because of course Franks can't go, but he's watching it on the screen in the other room. And then Randy and Gibbs come in and they're like, look, we've got a lead on the Joan Lewis killer. And Franks won't hear it. He's like, no, it's Cooks. Layla's interviewing Cook. He did it. We're going to get him. It's the same guy. And then Randy's like, look, Franks, we found her ID, right? It was burned up in the car. So it's not Cook's. And Franks is kind of upset because remember, that was one of the first things he said at the crime scene. Where's her ID? It's the same guy that went after Tish. So now that we know that the ID was found in the car and they have another lead, apparently Joan Lewis's car broke down and they dispatched a tow truck driver, and he was a one-man show, kind of like a one-man tow truck. And the driver has a domestic record, and they think it works in the timeline that this one-man tow truck that they kind of brokered out is the person who did this to Joan Lewis. So, I mean, obviously Randy and Gibbs have to track down that lead. He doesn't have an alibi. And they're going to go to his trailer park, right? See if they can talk to him. But Layla is still interviewing Cooks. And, she does well with the interview. She asks Cooks where he was, and he says where he was. He was at some, 24-hour diner, and he goes there a lot, and they can verify it. So, Layla's like, hey, can you write down your information and then you can go? Because remember, they're not arresting him. He came in willingly for questioning, but they're still getting his alibi. But Franks doesn't want to hear it. He comes in, he gets loud with Cooks, and Layla like controls him, like, hey, backs him down. Look, he came in willingly, he can leave. So even though, we fully believe that Cooks is the serial rapist, including in Tish's case, we don't believe that he's the killer. So, Franks is really starting to kind of get upset and kind of lose it. Like he really wants Cooks to be the killer, but it's looking more and more like it's this other guy. So he's just kind of having a hard time dealing with that. He has a picture of Cooks on his light, like his desk light, desk lamp, and he's just like constantly staring at it and like chain smoking. Mary Jo walks in and talks to Franks. I love Mary Jo. And she kind of was like, hey, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me? And Franks is like, well, I'm telling you now, which seemed kind of rude, but not rude because Franks doesn't really talk about it. And it's not his story to tell, right? It happened to Tish, so Franks isn't going to go around telling everybody. He told his team because he wants to nail him for it, right? For both things. So Mary Jo understands that and she's like, oh, I'll get a better picture of him for you, which I feel like is her kind of way of helping and saying, hey, I understand. We all love Tish. So when they go to the trailer park to find the lead, the tow truck guy, his name is Raymond Garcia. He comes back, sees them, and of course drives away. They shoot out the tires, they arrest him. They find the murder weapon. He confesses to killing her. So the Joan Lewis case is closed now, right? Because he confessed to raping and killing her, and they have the murder weapon. So wonderful, case closed. He's a horrible person. They got off the street. But Frank's is still kind of tore up because now he knows they have this person. And he knows, even though Tish broke up with him, Tish knows too, because she's one of the women that came in and identified him. And those women know, okay, you did a great job. You identified him. We don't have enough to hold him. So I think that's what's even more nerve wracking, not knowing if they'll ever get caught, but now knowing that you ID'd them and they still can't nail them. So that's got to be heart wrenching for Tish too, and all the other women that ID'd them, right? So Tish, what I didn't mention was the coroner at the scene of the woman in the burned car, Joan Lewis, at the beginning. That is Tish's uncle, the same uncle she's living with. So her uncle comes home and says, hey, we have a case today. Frank thinks it's the same guy, you know what I mean, that hurt you. So Tish kind of knows about the case through her uncle, that Frank's is, thinking it's the same person. So Tish goes in to see Oakley, the FBI guy, and says, I want to do another interview. And Oakley's like, I'm going to record it. I record all my interviews. And Tish is like, yep, we did it before. I'm fine with that. And you don't hear the interview. And then after the case closed with Joan Lewis, he sends over the tape. Layla listens to it because she's the lead on the case. And Tish basically says to Oakley, like, look, you probably don't know this, but Franks was my boyfriend. I don't think he's okay. I'm worried about him. He is not okay with this. Did you tell Franks, who Cooks is? Does he have the file? Does he have his picture? I'm worried about him. So Layla listens to this interview, that Tish had with Oakley, and she gets up right away and is like, where's Frank's, right? And of course, Frank's is, stalking Cooks. He's staking out the laundromat. You can see the light above the laundromat, which is, his apartment. And he's chain smoking again. And he's got a gun, and he goes to open the door to get out when you're like, okay, he's going to go confront him. This is not going to be good. As soon as he opens the door to get out of his car, Gibbs comes into the passenger seat and goes, look, I can't let you do this. You got to come with me back to the office. And Gibbs kind of has a one-on-one with Franks, right? And Gibbs basically says, look, I'm going to this counseling group, this support group at the VA. It's not helping me. I'm going. I'm not getting anything out of it. You help me. I want to help you. You help me. You need to continue to help me. So basically, Gibbs is saying, by working, by being my boss, my friend, you're getting me through this hard time. And I need you to continue to get me through this hard time. So I need you to come back with me. I don't want you to get out of the car and confront Cooks. I kind of like that. They kind of have that one-on-one. So Franks goes back to the office with Gibbs, and you find Layla, Randy, Gibbs, and Vera. Remember, we love Vera. She's a profiler. And they tell Franks we're still working the case. Joan Lewis's case is solved. We got the murderer. He raped her. He murdered her. He set the car on fire. Case closed. I'm glad we got him behind bars. He's a terrible person. But we are now all working on Tish's case. We know it's Cooks, and we're going to nail him. They don't have enough evidence. We're off the books. And, Frank says, like, it's an FBI case. And they're like, we know. we're still working it. We love you and Tish. Basically, we're still going to find it, right? And they talk about it, and Frank says, you're at risk. This isn't our case. They still want to help. They even talk about setting up a temporary headquarters in Randy's garage. So I thought it was really sweet that it's after hours and all of his coworkers are still on the Cook's case, trying to get him for raping all these women, including Tish. Right, because they know it was him. They ID'd him. They found, the scar on his neck, which the women say. One woman said the laundromat. He lives above the laundromat. Like, everything is checking out. So, and even Oakley said to Franks, like, if he's your murderer, you need to nail him, right? Because we brought him in. We don't have enough to hold him. So, I love that they're working the case, which kind of shadows regular NCIS. I know there's 22 years of regular NCIS, but they do a lot of things off the books if it's personal. So I feel like Gibbs seeing the team do this for Franks and him volunteering as well, because Gibbs is in on it too. You see Gibbs as an adult, as Mark Harmon in regular NCIS, and he does the same thing. If it's protecting Ziva, it's protecting McGee, Denozo, they do stuff off the books to protect them. And so like I liked that I was watching this because they're coming together as a family, as a team, and they're going to help Frank solve this, right? So I love that. They're like, we're going to go through all the evidence. So the break in the case is they go through the interview that Layla had with Cooks just recently on the Joan Lewis case. Remember, his alibi was a diner. So Vera is the profiler, right? So she's like, he's a creature of habit, right? So he went to this diner. There's two other diners that are closer to his house. So why is he choosing to drive out to this other diner? You know what I mean? And he goes to this diner frequently. The waitresses know him. He sits there for hours. The waitresses say he has to have a certain table. He gets angry if somebody is sitting at the table when he arrives. So now we're like, okay, Vera's got the profile of him. What is so special about this diner? What is so special about this particular booth or seat or table he sits at? What is outside? What can you see from this view at this table? So they find out there's a nursing home and they're like, okay, there's benches at the nursing home. Why is he going there? So I like that they're like, finding out information. Now, the FBI didn't have this information because remember, we just got it thinking he was, attached to the Joan Lewis case, which he wasn't, but this is new information, right? That the FBI wouldn't have had if Layla didn't bring him in for possibly, raping and killing Joan Lewis. So I love that. The break in the case was something that NIS did, right? They did when they brought him in for questioning. So they find out that his mom is at the nursing home. So I'm like, yes, let's go interview her. So they go interview his mom and, Randy and, Vera and Randy talk to the mom while Layla, Gibbs, and Franks are searching her room. And it's definitely interesting talking to the mom because she says stuff like, he was a hateful child, and I apologize, I'm looking at my notes to see exactly what they said. He was a hateful child. He tried to burn me with an iron. So she said when she was younger she used to iron her hair, which is what we did back in the day. I mean, I remember that you had an ironing board, which I know sounds crazy and very dangerous, but I remember, so when she said that, I'm like, yes, I remember that was a thing. And she said that he used to try to burn me with the iron. And so, he's a hateful child, but I got him. One time I got him on his neck. So I'm like, okay, this is legit. He has a scar on his neck. His mother just told us how he got the scar on his neck, right? And she says that he comes and sees her all the time. And she tells him that she's kind of she's kind of scared of him. She says, he likes to scare me, quote unquote. He goes in my room at night when I'm sleeping and he watches me. So to me, that's creepy. I mean, I'm all for visiting family at nursing homes, but if, that's weird. That's just weird. Whether you're saying bad things about your child or not, I mean, obviously she is saying he was a hateful child, but as an older person, she's in this nursing home and he comes in when she's sleeping and watches her. That's creepy. If you're sleeping and you wake up and somebody's hovering over you, and then to say things like, he scares me, he's always watching me. So I'm like, okay, what does she know? Does she know that he's a serial rapist? Like, is he like hovering over her in fear? I mean, you just, there's a reason why, right? So that kind of had me nervous. Like, what is he afraid she's going to tell us? Well, she doesn't tell us anything like that. She doesn't tell us about any of the victims, just that she's scared of him and that he comes to her room frequently at night while she's sleeping. So while, Gibbs and Layla is looking through and Franks is looking through, her room, um, they see the back of a picture frame is a little open, like there's a little crease there where it looks like something's hidden. So Franks opens up the picture frame, and it's ironic that the picture frame is of her. So remember when I was telling you the story of she used to iron her hair? She used to say she had beautiful brown hair and she used to iron it. So the picture is of her as a young girl with long brown hair. So I think it's ironic that that's where the sun hit it. But out falls all of these IDs, and one of them is Tish. So we're like, okay, remember, Cooks, that's one of his trophies, is keeping all the IDs of the women he raped. One of them, like I said, being Tish, and Frank sees them and finds Tish's. So definitely glad they found evidence, right? And then, of course, this is the FBI's case. So they can't do anything. They turn everything over to the FBI. They go above the laundromat and arrest Cooks. Now, Wheeler is there, Frank's boss, and the FBI Oakley, and he's like, he's in his car, he's watching us. And Wheeler's like, yeah, I know. And Frank's is, 100 feet away. He's not interfering, but he's watching Cooks in handcuffs get into the police car. And I think that was, and it was just, I don't want to say funny because this is a serious case, but Wheeler and Oakley are like, yeah, we know he's watching. Technically, he's not involved. We can't say anything to Franks, but I feel like Franks needed to see him get arrested. So definitely, I'm really glad we saw this episode. I'm really glad we were able to close the case for Tish, because once you find out what happened to her, your heart just goes out to her. I think one of the worst things you can do to a woman is that physically assault her. Because that's just, it's something that women will relive, and it's just a horrible thing for a woman to go through. And then for them not to find him is one thing, but to find the rapist and then not have enough to hold him is almost worse, because it's like you always hope that they find the person, but to know that they're still going on their business is just a terrible feeling. So I'm really glad that they were able to actually arrest him and get evidence so he can't hurt any more women. And then Gibbs and Layla kind of talk for a minute, and Gibbs, says she did a good job running point and kind of compliments her. And that's really the only interaction you kind of have with the two of them. And then Franks runs to Tish's uncle's house because he knows that's where she is. And Franks wants to be the first person to tell Tish, like, we got him, right? But the uncle says the FBI, already called her, already told her, so Tish knows. And Franks is like, can I talk to her? And the uncle says that she left. She only stayed because she was worried you weren't okay. She was worried about you. But now that, we caught him and he's going to go away, and she knows you're okay, she left. She needed to leave for her. She had to do this for her. So Franks is finding out like Tish left. And like I said throughout, like kind of said it in the beginning, you see these flashbacks with, Tish and her uncle as a child. So I think the last scene is you see Tish driving and she's by herself, but she kind of has a smile on her face. And I feel like this weight has been lifted off of her, right? Not just that she was raped, because that's terrible enough, but knowing that she had to worry about Franks. Once Franks knew about Cooks, um, I feel like she was so worried about Franks. So I think when the uncle said, look, she stayed because she was worried you were not okay. Now that you're okay, she felt it was okay for her to leave. She's able to move on. And I want Tish to be with Franks. I think they're really good for each other. But at the same time, I'm so happy for Tish. It's her freedom. She feels liberated, right? This terrible thing happened to her. Now he's caught. She feels that Franks is going to be okay now that that happened. And she has to move on, and she has to find herself and be okay being an independent woman. So I liked that last scene of her smiling, and it's almost like she can feel whole again or start to heal, and have that closure, because it is a terrifying thought, and having that over you. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see Franks and Tish get back together. I think our future episodes here are going to show Franks and how he navigates after Tish, knowing that he and Tish are truly done because she actually left. So all in all, I thought it was a good episode. I loved the closure. I loved being able to, take two terrible people off the streets. So glad to find an end to Tish's case. And like I say, I'm glad they finally told us how long, because I was thinking she was raped years ago, and she's constantly been having this terrible battle within herself, needing that closure and going through that. And to know it was 11 months. Now, even though 11 months is still a long time, just to kind of know that now it's over and they can both move on and have that closure, and a terrible person is off the streets. I thought it was a great episode. I'm definitely looking forward to how the rest of the season goes, because now Franks and Gibbs, and they're both going to be single, see if they can lean on each other and just see that relationship develop. So I hope you liked my review. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and until next episode, I will see you then. Bye.